Alrighty, let's find the amplitude and period of this cosine function. The amplitude is always the front part, but it's the absolute value of that, so it's just the 3/4. The period, well, this is your b value, and that helps you create your period. So what you do is you take 2 pi, and you divide by the b value. So 2 pi divided by 4/3. So when you divide, you flip the second one and multiply. So you flip it and multiply. The 2/4 reduces to 1/2. So I have 3 pi over 2. 3 pi over 2 is your period. 3 over 4 is your amplitude. So if I'm going to graph this function, you notice there's no midline. Nothing's at the end here. So your front here is your amplitude. It's 2, not it's the absolute value of that. But their negative means it's flipped, so it's going to be upside down. So be aware of that. Now this is, again, is not your period. So it's going to be 2 pi divided by this. And when you divide, you flip and multiply, so you get 4 pi. So we know it's cosine. We know it's upside down. Normally cosine will start at the top, which is at 2. But since it's negative, it starts at the bottom at -2. It's going to end 4 pi over, so you go over to 4 pi. That's the last dot. It's the end of the period. So you always start and end at the same value. And you end at 4 pi. Halfway between those, you go up the amplitude. So you went down 2 and you go up 2, halfway between these for a cosine. Then halfway between these two is your midline, and halfway between these two is your other midline hit. Then make the curve for that. If it was a sine, you would be starting at the midline. Cosines start at the max and min depending on if it's a negative or positive a value. So if I want to write the equation for this graph, first of all, let's find our amplitude. Our amplitude is how far from the midline to the highest or lowest point, and in that case it's 2.5. So my amplitude is 2.5. My period is, well, from 0, how far over until I finish one cycle, and that is at pi, so my period's pi. But I need my b value to make the equation. Your b is going to be always 2 pi divided by your period. So 2 pi divided by the period, those divide out, leaving you 2. So for my function, I know this is a sine because sine starts at the midline, goes up and down. So it's a positive a value, okay, because it's going up first. If it was going down, it'd be a negative 2.5. So my a value goes first, my amplitude. Right here is my b value, created from the pi here. And I created my function. Again, it's sine because it started at midline. If it started up here, it would be cosine. All right, this problem can be a little tricky. You just got to read very, very carefully. A weight on the end of a coiled spring is pushed 8 centimeters above its resting point. So they pushed it up 8 centimeters. Then the weight is released and moves downward, passing its resting point at t equals 0 seconds. Then oscillating in simple harmonic motion, it completes one cycle in 0.1 seconds. Note the downward is the negative direction. Basically write an equation with d and t as your variables. So what you have to catch on to, I missed this the first time, it starts 8 up. So I thought, oh, I'm starting 8 up. I'm starting up here. But then if you keep reading, it says it's released downward and passes through the resting position, which is the midline. Midline is resting position at 0 seconds. So at 0 seconds, it actually starts here. So actually, you start back here at 8 up. So it goes down at 0 seconds, it's at resting. So then it goes down 8 centimeters, and then it goes back up to 8 centimeters above resting. Then it goes down again, and that creates a sine graph. Okay, I thought that 8 meant because it's pushed up. I didn't look carefully that at time 0 it's at resting point. Resting point is the midline. So at the resting point, the midline, it's going down 8 and then back up 8 and 8 more. So I'm at 6. I went up 16 centimeters, then back down and keeps going. Now, the 0.1 seconds is one cycle. So it took 1.1 seconds for it to go down and back to that same resting point, following a cycle of all the way down and back up. So amplitude is 8. Period is 0.1, which I'm going to use 1/10, which is kind of important. Now, to make an equation right here, I need to take 2 pi and divide by 1/10. Flip this. When I divide, I flip and multiply the second one. So I get 20 pi is my b value. So you look over here, I have a sine, because that looks like a sine function. All right, 20 pi goes in here. All right, what I did forget is I forgot the x. There should be an x right there. So I got that fixed right now. So that should be an x. Actually, it's not x. What it should be is actually, it should be a t. So that should be a t there. We don't want to miss that. It's actually pretty important. That should be a t right there. So, because we have t's and d's. So this is d, this is t. I almost did the cardinal mistake a lot of people make. 20 pi t. A lot of people forget the letter, just like I did. It says perfect. I almost could delete this video, but I like it because a lot of students make that same mistake. That's the letter. Don't forget the letter. Such a common mistake. Now, why is it -8? Because it's going down first and then back up. And down from the sign is a negative. Your amplitude's 8, but the negative is the motion of how it's working. And sine because you started at rest and you're shrinking down.